Okay. So we already saw the HTTP module, right? So how to make an API call and how to get data and render it in the Angular component template. So now coming to Interceptor, basically we use Interceptor to intercept the request. Okay, so which request I'm talking about is the HTTP request we made. So for example, you're calling an API and getting some student data, then basically that request must be authenticated, right? So otherwise everyone can call the same API and get data. So in those cases, uh, we have to send some authentication relational information to the backend server or the backend API. So how can we send that data? So basically we use Interceptor to intercept that request and attach the token or session related information to that request and send that request to the server. And then once we get the data back, we'll check whether there is an error or is a success response, and any validation related checks we do. And then once those are successful, we can send that back to the component. Okay. So assume that Interceptor is like a middleman or like a broker agent. Okay. So this is your Angular application, and you send a request to the backend server. That means, let's say, your student API. And while doing so, you write an interceptor in your Angular application, which will basically intercept this request. Okay, it will basically stop that request and do some extra checks, meaning do some extra operations. So meaning you can add some extra HTTP headers, or you can add some authentication token or cookie information, and then you can send that request to the backend API. Okay, and once backend receives that data, and if authentication is successful, it will return the data, the response back to the interceptor. Okay, not to the Angular application. So it will send the data back to your interceptor, and then once it is, let's say, server can send any response, right? If it sends 200, then that's a success response. But if it sends 400 or 500, then that is a error response. That time we can show some error alert. Okay, some alert we can show in the page saying that there is some error happened in the backend, please try later, something like that, generic error. Or if a successful response, then we'll send the data back to the service who called this API, maybe the student service or some or direct component itself, right? So it doesn't matter. But the role of interceptor is to intercept the request and then add some extra information to it and then send it to the backend. And once data receives it, do some validations and send back to the component. Okay, so that is the job of an interceptor. Now, so where we get that interceptor used, right? So before making the request to server and after getting response from server too. So two times we use that interceptor in the request flow, like sending and receiving the data. So while sending, you can intercept, and while receiving also, you can intercept. Let's see some example and how it will work. So in order to create an interceptor, we just have to create a file and put injectable on top of it and then implement this interceptor. Or you can create the interceptor using our NGCLI also. Okay, so you can create that interceptor, then this file will be created. This entire file will be created. And in order to use this interceptor, right? So basically, we have to import the HTTP client module. Just like in order to use the API calls, in order to make the API calls, first thing is we have to import the HTTP module, because all the communication related, right? The Ajax calls related classes and components and services, right? So everything will be inside this HTTP client module. That's the reason we have to import this module. And once that is done, then you can create your interceptor. So once you create interceptor using the NGCLI, it will basically create this class, this entire class, except this code. Okay, this is the code written by us, but except this code, it will generate all this entire thing. Okay, so your interceptor name implements the HTTP interceptor, and this is your constructor. And because you are implementing this method, we have to provide implementation for the intercept method. Okay, so this is the two parameters we get here. Okay, one is the HTTP request and the second is the HTTP handler, and it will return an observable. Okay, this is the signature added by the NGCLA itself. Okay, because it has the HTTP interceptor as interface, right? So this interceptor has this method, and we are providing implementation for that method here inside our class. Now, what we're doing is just look at this code, okay? So it has two sections. It looks complicated by looking like this, but if you split this code, it is simple, very simple. So first part is you're basically cloning that request, okay? Taking that request, and second part is you're calling the handle method, and inside that, if it is success, you're doing this. If it is failure, you're doing this, okay? So that is simple. Now, coming back to here. So as we already saw, the intercept method will take request as a parameter, okay, input parameter. So now what we do is we take that request and dot clone, okay, we create a copy of that request. We do not modify the original request. We make a copy of that HTTP request, and then we add some extra header here. Okay, in this case, what I'm doing is I'm adding some authorization token. Okay, this is some dummy token, but I'm just to represent, I'm adding some header, okay, authorization header. So I'm adding headers. So where we can add the header, right? So in the header section, right? So but how can you create the header object? So we take this request object dot headers and dot set this new header. Okay, so we're taking the original request and taking the headers array, and inside that I'm setting a new header, HTTP header. Okay, that is done. And once that is done, so what I have to do is we have to pass that request to the next step. Okay, next step is it could be calling your backend API, or it could be another HTTP interceptor. Okay, so it depends. Let's say you have multiple interceptors, interceptor 1, interceptor 2. Then first one interceptor will be called, and because we have this handler, right? So the handler, the next is our variable name, handler variable. So using that next variable, we handle that request. Okay, whatever request we modified here, we handle it here. So how it will be handled? So it will be passed to your next interceptor. Okay, it will be passed to your next interceptor, or if there are no interceptors, it will directly go to the server. Okay, so the two things will happen. One is if there are more interceptors, it will be passed on to those interceptors, or if it is there are no interceptors, then it will go to the server. And then and that is done. Okay, so till here that is done, and once that request is handled, it will send the response back to you, right? So response will come to here, the highlight section. Okay, we take that response and we send it to the pipe operator, and pipe operator will send it to the inside here. Okay, pipe operator has inside section, and here we have a tab. Tab means you take that response out of the pipeline. Okay, so basically you send the request to server, and once you get the response, you send it to the pipe operator. The pipe operator, basically it is going through the pipeline, and the tab means you take that request out of that pipe, and then you look into it. Okay, you look into it. So for what we are looking at, we are looking at whether the response, okay, the response is of type HTTP response. If it is of type HTTP response, and we are saying API call is success. Okay, if it is again, so there are two sections in that. Okay, in the tab method, we have this is one section, and this is the second section. Okay, so always the first parameter is called success handler, and the second parameter is called error handler. Okay, so this is nothing but a function here. Okay, the first function is called success handler function, second one is called error handler. if Angular HTTP client module receives a successful response, it will call the first parameter, okay, first response handler. And then here we check what is the HTTP response, and then we print it is a success. But if it is a error, right? So this section will be called, and here we again check if it is a HTTP response, and then we will print it as the error. Okay, success goes into this part, sorry, this part, and error goes into this part. So what we can do, if it is success, right, we don't do anything. So it will send back the response to the caller. The caller means some service or component. But if it is error, right, so what we can do here is we can show some generic alert in the application saying there is an error happened while calling this API. Okay, so that toast message we can show. So this is the interceptor example. Okay, so we can have multiple interceptors. Why we need to have multiple interceptors? Here, let's say I added authorization, so I can call it a authorization interceptor, and I can have another interceptor, and I can add excuse me, I can add some other header. Okay, I don't want to put two headers inside my single interceptor. So that time I can do, I can create another interceptor and add another header. Okay, I want to separate these things out. That's the reason I can create multiple interceptors. Okay, so after doing this, did our job is done? No. Okay, first step is we have to import the HTTP client module, and second step is we have to create an interceptor, and we have to write logic according to our requirement. And then the third step is go to your app module or the module where you want to provide this interceptor, right? So go there and go to the provider section. In the provider section, add this. Okay, add this add this object completely. Okay, so providers, what we are doing is we are telling provide HTTP interceptors and use class my interceptor. Okay, use this class, and there can be multiple interceptors also. We can basically mention this one. If there is single interceptor, you can say multi, no, but if it is multi two, you can have more than one interceptor. Okay, that's the meaning of it. So now how can we verify this is working, right? So you can make an HTTP call and see if it is working or not. So how we can make an HTTP call? We already saw yesterday, right? So we created a service and sent the HTTP calls, but here just for representation, for a validation purpose, in the app component itself, I added this HTTP client service, and I use the get method to call this API, right? So made a call and subscribe to the response, and then in the success section, again, each subscribe method has two sections. One is success and another is error, right? In the success section, I'm printing the call is success. The error section, call is failed. Okay, so this is how we can verify whether our API is getting called or not. So this one only confirms whether API is getting called or not. But how to know whether the service is that the interceptor is getting called? So open browser console and go to the network section and see in that header the authorization header is added or not, because here we are adding the authorization header, right? So we can check that whether authorization header is added to the existing requests or not. So because all the HTTP request doesn't have the authorization header, right? So only the request made through our Angular application will have that authorization header, or it will print this also, right? So before making API call, we are printing the updated request. So either by looking at this, we can know that this interceptor is getting called, or by looking at the headers, we can see the authorization header is getting added or not. Okay, so let's see how this example works. 4200. Okay, so this is working now. Okay, this is working. Let's see whether we can use the same the interceptor for these two services. Okay, one is we are getting the price and Bitcoin price and date, and the second one is we are getting this data from some API and showing it here, right? Let me open the intercept the F12 and go to the network tab, and let me refresh this. Okay, so after refreshing, okay, let me see whether that API has we are making for Bitcoin price we are making one API call, right? So this is the call, and in the headers, do we have authorization header in the request headers? So we don't have any authorization header in the request headers, right? We basically while sending a request we are adding authorization header. That's the reason it must be inside the request headers, but we don't have it here. Okay, so that is one thing confirmed, and let's check for the second API also. Okay, let me click on this. Then second API call is made, and go here and check in the request headers. Do we have authorization header? No, we don't have. Okay, so now go back to the application, and let's add the interceptor. Let's create the interceptor. ng generate interceptor, and authorization or authorization interceptor. Okay, so it created two files. One is spec file, other file is interceptor file. So where it is created? Yeah, here it is created. Okay. So now look at this, right? So it basically we just used that ngCli command. It created everything for us. Okay, it created the injectable decorator, and it created constructor, and created the implementation for this HTTP interceptor. So only thing is we have to write some logic inside this. Okay, so in order to save the time, let's go here and copy these two lines. Okay, so let me paste it here. Instead of sending the original request, right? Earlier it was sending the original request coming from, to the intercept. It is sending the original request, but we cloned that request here. We cloned a new request, and we put that cloned request into updated request, right? So let me copy this and put it here. Okay. So now done. Let's go back and see what's happening. Let me refresh this. We click on this. Okay, so what we have to do, we have to basically do, we have to configure this interceptor, right? So we did not configure this interceptor. So that's the reason it's not working. Now go back to the app module, and in the app module, we have to add that interceptor in the providers array, right? So how can we add that? So if you have any services, just put comma there, and go to the website and copy this 3 lines and add it here. Instead of my interceptor, I can say authentication interceptor. Okay. Now let me save it and go back to the browser. See, that is working. Okay. See here, the authorization header is added, right? So let me click on the other one also. It is failed for some reason. I think the backend API is not working. If we send authorization header with some random data, some random this thing, right? So let me click on the this second API and see how it is working. Okay, second API is working. Okay, second API call was made successfully, but let's see whether the authorization header is added there. See here, the authorization header is added in the request headers. Okay, some dummy code, but it's not getting printed. I mean, it's not, the response is coming back to the response is not coming back to the service. Why it's not coming? Go here and let's comment this and see whether the previous one is working. Yeah, the previous one is working. For some reason, if you put authorization, it's not working. Let's see in the console. Component.html. This error is coming here. Okay. Okay, just to remove those errors, I added question marks there. But the whole point is to see whether that log is getting printed or not. Okay, this call is already made, and this one is printed. Okay, the logger, and let me try to make the second call. Okay, I clicked on it, and second call is also made, and it went through the interceptor. Okay, both are getting printed in the interceptor, line number 21. Okay. But if we add these headers, for some reason it is not working. Yeah, the second one is working, but the first one is not working. First one is throwing some course error, but second one is getting success, and we are able to see the response here. Okay, and where it is sending the authorization header, you can go to the let me hide this and go to the request section. Yeah, here I can see the authorization header added for the second one also, but for first one it is throwing error when we add this authorization. Okay, so this is the use of interceptors. Okay, basically you can intercept each request going from your application to backend server and do some manipulation there, like adding some extra headers or adding some content. And once you get response, you can basically check whether it's a successful response or error response, right? So yeah, any questions?
No.
So you understood this concept?
Uh, I get the concept actually, but
Okay, so basically interceptor is the point of intercept is to handle each request. Basically, uh, like a middleman, right? So each request going from your application, you have to intercept and add some extra headers or add some cookies and then send the request to the server. And once response comes back, then send back to the your service. Okay, if you are calling that API from a service, then it will send to the service. Okay, so it's like a middleman. Okay, so all requests has to go through that person, that middleman. Okay, that is the point of interceptor. But what is the need of having interceptors? Right, interceptor basically gives you more control of your API calls. It will give more control. So sometimes what will happen? Most of the APIs nowadays is token based APIs. Okay, once you have authenticated successfully, you will get a token back to your application. Okay, once you logged into the system or logged into a website, the backend server send you a token. So that token Angular will keep inside either the local storage, or it will keep somewhere in some variable in the interceptor, right? So you can create a variable and keep the token there. And now what happens, because you logged in, whenever you go to your profile page or you go to your dashboard, only information related to you should come and display, right? Most of the website. In those cases, the backend servers will demand the token. Okay, otherwise, if you don't have the token, they will redirect you to the login page again. Okay, but how to handle that scenario? So because you already have that variable saved in your interceptor, so each request is going to your interceptor, right? So whenever request go to the backend server, that request go through your interceptors. So there you can have that authorization section as the token, and you send the request to backend, and then backend will validate, because that's a valid token, right? Backend will validate, and successfully it will send data back to your interceptor and then to your service. Okay, but if you assume that you don't have the interceptor in this scenario, how can you add that authorization token for each request? It is difficult, no? Because there will be, like, let's say 10 services you have: student service and department service, faculty service, this, that. So in each and every service, you have to manually add this authorization header all the 10 times, because you have 10 services. But you have interceptors, right? So in the interceptor, every request will be tapped, or every intercept will be intercepted. So there you can have this 2 lines of code, lines of code hardly. So you can basically add the token here for your authorization header. This is easy, no? It's like a centralized way of centralized mechanism of basically tapping each request and adding some header related information, or adding some custom headers for your authentication, etc.
Okay, so
Okay, so how can you basically implement an interceptor? So basically, you have to create an interceptor just like any your directives and pipes, right? You can create an interceptor using this ngCli command, ng generate interceptor and your interceptor name. So it will generate everything for you except this. Okay, you have to add whatever changes you want to do for that request.
okay, so just
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So what will be the? I mean, we already saw like gods, right? So
Okay.
uh, yeah, I'm
So
just
you're asking
closing
what is the need of gods, and what is the need of interceptors?
interceptor. Yeah,
Okay.
it's just
So
a bit
yeah,
confusing. So
this will be a little confusing, but guards are entirely different. Okay, guards are basically to block your access to URLs in your application, in your own application.
okay,
Okay,
okay.
so
Yeah,
if you're
it's
navigating
more like
from home page to profile page, then you must be logged in. You must be authenticated, so that then only you can go to your profile page, right? So
mhm.
you can check that status whether you logged in or not in your application in one of your guards, and then where is guards? Yeah, here. Yeah. So from home page to you're going to profile page. So basically you must be authenticated to go to the profile page. So you write a guard and you check whether you have a logged in state or not. But you don't have logged in state, then redirect to the login page. Or if you already logged in, you'll be allowed to go to the profile page. Okay, that is the use of guards. But this is entirely different. Interceptors are basically while making backend calls, you intercept that request and do some operation on it.
Okay.
Okay, so both are entirely different. There is no relation between these two.
Okay.
Or there will be slight relation in some cases. Okay? Only in some cases. Let me tell. Let's say the same example. User is navigating from home page to profile page, and then the guard will block him, right? So how guard will know whether user is logged in or not? Okay, you can do one thing. From guard itself, you can make an HTTP call to the backend server, checking whether user is logged in or not. Okay, so while you're checking, the interceptor will add that token and it will send a request to the backend server. If the token is valid, backend server will return true. True means it is successfully logged in. Like the token is valid. If the token is invalid, then it will return false. In that case, your guard will make a decision based on that response back. If it is true, then it will send user to this route. If the response from the API is false, then you can you will be navigated back to the login page. Okay, in that way, those are, it's not basically related, but the steps will come that way. Okay, guard can make an HTTP call to check whether user status is logged in or not. Okay, while making that call, the interceptor will add the authentication token and then send.
Okay.
Okay, so that is the difference. And yeah, so that's interceptors. And let's say how to build a Angular project. Okay, so we don't have this AWS and the Firebase stuff, but I can basically walk you through how to build an Angular application. Okay, so assume that you build the entire application. Okay, so this is while training, right? So we added all these components and all these pages and sorry, directives, classes, interceptors, modules, everything, right? So our application is ready. Assume that our application is ready now. Okay, I want to deploy this application in some server. Okay, that's the whole point, right? So we developed this application. Now I want to check how it will work in internet. Okay, I want to deploy it somewhere so that my users will use that application. Okay, so far what we're doing is we're doing ng serve, right? ng serve is basically serving your application locally. That means running your application locally. But in order to generate a build, you have to execute a different command. Okay, so what command you can execute? ng build. Just execute that ng build. It will generate a dist folder, dist folder here, and then it will generate all your build files and all your images, everything into this file. It will move your build files into that folder. Okay, now it is building, right? It will create a dist folder here. Normally it will take a couple of around like 20 to 30 seconds. Yeah, our build is done. Okay, so this is the dist folder it generated. Earlier it was not there, but now it is there, right? So it created all these files. Okay, if you look at these are all like looking like some junk files, right? So it is not understandable. If you open any file also, you will not understand anything. It's like all the junk, even the JavaScript files also. You select any of these files, runtime file, poly files, main files, this will look like a junk, right? You will not understand anything. but all your components, directives, and all your templates, interceptors, classes, enums, everything you have in your entire code base, right? Entire source folder will be inside these build files. Okay, so they'll be inside these files. Okay, if I go here, almost like some thousands of code is there. So all this is generated from all your components and modules. So that is the beauty of Angular application. Once you build it, no one will understand these files. Okay, so this is your index file. This is the HTML file, and it will have a couple of things. This is a basic HTML file. Okay, doesn't have much. Only thing is it will have this app root section, the app root component, and then it will import all these JavaScript files and CSS files. Okay, if you see runtime and some code.js, okay, you have runtime file here, and then poly files is here. Okay, and then the main file is here. Okay, it is importing all these files from this folder. And if you go here, you have the CSS file imported here. Okay, the styles.8d5, this file is imported here. So what it is doing is it is basically creating a basic HTML file and then importing the CSS file here and then importing the JS files here. And in the middle, it has the app root. So once whenever Angular application is downloaded to the browser, right, it will download only this page at first. Okay. If you go to our example application, okay, so we are not downloading any specific page here. But if I refresh, okay, we stopped this server, right? Okay, let me run it again. Yeah, it ran, and let me come here and let me reload. Okay. Now I see some pages coming and displaying, but I'm not specifically downloading any page. Okay. So, okay, instead of this, let me do one thing. So let me refresh this and let me go to the source page. Okay, view page source. So whenever I view the page source, it is exactly downloading that HTML file from this file. Okay, from the dist folder, I have index.html, right? So my browser is downloading only that folder. Okay, that content, that HTML content from the index.html. Now, but I don't see my components and I don't see my modules, directives, pipes, services, nothing I can see, right? So everything will be included in these files, runtime.js, and mainly in main.js and vendor.js, you will have all your code, all your business logic, okay? And styles.js basically will have styles, mostly the application CSS styles related code, and style.css will have the CSS related code, and the runtime.js basically it won't be available in for the production application. Only in local it will generate the runtime.js. Okay, because whenever you save, the page will load automatically, right? So for that purpose, this file will be added. But apart from that, there is no use of this runtime file. But mostly your styles.js, vendor.js, and main.js are the main important things for your Angular application. Okay. So now whatever things happening inside your browser, right, in this view, will be done by Angular dynamically. Okay, you might not have much thing displayed in your source code here, but every manipulation and everything in the UI happening from those JavaScript files only, which you imported. Okay, so now how to build an Angular application using the build command. Okay, Either you can use the ng build just to build a dev builder, right? Dev build or local build, you can use the ng build. But in order to build for production, okay, you want to build your application for production, then you can do ng build configuration production. Now it will remove the disk folder files from the disk folder. Okay? There are no files now, and then it will again create these files. Okay, so the main difference between building with the production flag and just using the ng build, right? The sizes are very important things. Okay, so if you are building for okay, let's say if you're building for your local, okay, then see the sizes. Okay, the vendor file size is 2.29 MB, and the styler CSS styler JSS is 366 KB, and polyfiles is 315 KB. But here you can see the main file is 229 KB. Okay, here the vendor JS, sorry, main file is main file, your vendor JS and style, what is it? Yeah, these two files, main file and vendor JS, these two are more than around 2.39 MB and 78 KB, around 2.4 KB, 4 MB, sorry, 2.4 MB. But here it is reduced down to 229 KB. Okay, so basically it reduces a lot of stuff there, and your styles.css and style.jss is around 366 KB, but is down reduced down to 157 KB. Okay, and poly files also it is 315 KB, but is reduced to 33 KB. Basically, the overall application size will be reduced down to your production grade builds. Okay, and also the we have two modules, right? Apple module and Orange module we created in one of our classes. So in dev build it is created 3.64 KB and 3.59 KB, but here it is created 863 bytes and 659 bytes. So okay, it reduced even further. Okay, so that is the main advantage of having a production build and dev build. Okay, dev build it will include all the unnecessary stuff, but whereas production build it will remove all those things and it will create a concise build so that you can take these files and deploy anywhere. It will work. Okay, so now how to deploy this application? How to run this application in uh, production scenarios? Okay, so okay, I have a web server installed in my local. Okay, so that server is called Apache server. So I have this Apache server installed in my local, and I'm just trying to demonstrate how you can deploy an Angular application. But mostly, you will not be deploying these applications, right? Basically, the developer job is to just develop the application and push the code to the repository. That's it. We don't go and manually deploy. So, but how to deploy? We just have to have a knowledge on how to deploy a server application in a server, right? So, in Apache server, let me start the server. Okay, now server is started on port 80 and 443. Now, okay, my document custom program files exam, right? So let me copy the server root. So we have to copy these files into one of the server folder, and I'm checking where that folder is. HTTP, no, not HTTP docs. Okay, yeah. So this is a server folder, okay. HTTP htdocs. Okay, this server folder, if I copy my files, I can see my application in the browser. Okay, let me do one thing. Let me create one folder, new folder, and let me call it hello-world. Okay, so this is my new application where I am going to deploy my new application. Now let me go back to the this folder. Okay, let me open it in the file explorer, and let me copy all these files. Okay, let me copy all these files and go here and put it in the hello world. Okay, all the files from the dist folder. Now let me open browser and let me go to the server page. Okay, what is the default port is running? Is running on 80. Okay, slash, what is the folder name we created? Hello-world. Okay, got it. So there is some small thing we have to do while deploying the application. In here, let me remove this here, and manual deploying always causes some issues. Okay, that's the reason we have always this CI/CD. Replace the file and destination. And okay, this is mandatory field. Let me check in some other application. What is the default value we have? Dist folder index.html. It is root only. Let me update it again. Something wrong with this base path. Uh, replace and yes, yes, it's working. So there was some issue with the base path. Okay, so I fixed it. Now, if you look at this URL and the URL we were working on, right? So the URL we were working on is localhost 4200 because we ran the npm start, right? So this is basically locally serving. Now, just for development, you can use this npm start or ngserve, like both are same, right? So just it will basically start a local server inside your console here, and then it will deploy all these files in that local server internally. So whenever you go to browser and say localhost 4200, we'll be able to see that page here, just for making our development faster. But whereas once your application is developed completely, then you have to deploy that application in somewhere in the server, right? So I have a server called Apache HTTP server, and I started it, and it is running on port number 80. Now I deployed my application inside this folder, hello world, inside my server. And then when I try to access using the localhost / hello-world, then I'm able to see my application is coming up. Okay. So normally in remote servers also, you'll have servers like this HTTP or any other servers. You have to copy your all these files and deploy there in some folder. Then you'll be able to see your application like this. Okay. So instead of localhost, you'll be basically typing some domain name, right? So www.myapplication.com, something like that. Again, slash your application name. So that's how your application will come up. Okay. This is how you deploy Angular applications. Okay. So any questions here?
No.
So I demonstrated using the Apache server. Okay. So there is
Yeah.
another server called Nginx. There also same process. You have to create a folder and copy your stuff into there, and then you'll be able to see the application. I can demonstrate this Mr. UI website also. Okay, this is basically, this entire thing is Angular application. Okay, if you view the source, there won't be much source, so there will be little source code. And how I can deploy this application, right? So this is the domain name, mrui.com. But in order to deploy, right, I don't have to do anything. I just have to run this command. Okay, ng build configuration production. Okay, till this we already saw. Okay, so that is just for building the application. So it will build the application and it will create all these files in my dish folder. Okay, so let's wait for that. We deleted that folder and now it will create freshly. Yeah, it created again and it added all these files. I have many modules. Okay, that's the reason it created these many files. Otherwise, it will not create that many files. It will create only 3 files, just like now what I have to do is I have to just type ng deploy. Okay, only one command, ng deploy. Okay, so currently this will deploy in my Firebase account. Okay, I created a Firebase project, and in that Firebase module, it will deploy. Okay, it is using this version of Firebase tools, and all these files. Okay, I think when I executed this command, it is again building it freshly. Okay, I don't have to do the production command, right? Ng build configuration production. So when I run this ng deploy, it is running that again internally. So it generated all these files, and now it is deploying. Okay, it is sending all these files. It is found like 73 files, and it is uploading all those files to the remote server, and it will create a new version of those this deployment, and version is finalized, and it will release a new version, and release is complete. Okay. Now, where can I see that my project related information in the Firebase? So let me show quickly. This is my Firebase. So this is basically a Firebase account I created, right? So let me go to all products and let me go to the hosting. The hosting. Okay, this is the version we released just now. Okay, so 26 September 2336. Okay, this is 2337, right? Just 1 minute back we deployed this version. Okay, earlier it was 940. I deployed once, like I added some new content, I pushed it, right? So all these versions, right? So every day I'm updating some content, I'm pushing. So that's the reason they are coming here. Okay. Now I have attached how many domains? I have attached mrui.com, I attached www.mrui.com, or these are added by the Firebase itself. If I open this, then it will open same site. Okay, the URL is different here. We are training some random name .web.app, right? So that one also will open same website. Or if you go to Mr. UI also, it will open same website. That is a just domain name. Okay. So, but whatever domain name you type, right? So we have around 4 URLs. This one is one URL, this one second, third, and 4 URLs. Out of these 4 URLs, whatever URL you open, it will point to this version. Okay, this version we released. Okay. So basically this version will have all the files from this disk folder. Okay. So we push this to the server, and now server has 4 domains or 4 URLs. So if you open any of these two, it will point to the current version, okay, latest version, and it has around 75 files. Okay. So why it is 75 files? We have only around 10-15 files, right? Why 75 files? If we collect this image also, right? So it will be 75 files. All these files, all these images and everything included, total 75 files. Okay, so this is basically Firebase deployment, but in real scenarios where you will be working, right? So there won't be any Firebase, or there won't be any Apache server, or there won't be any servers. Basically, we'll be deploying in this the pods, or what we call easy to instances, right? Or like the Kubernetes deployments. So basically, we don't like as developers, you won't be doing that. Okay. So that setup is already will be done by the senior developers when the application is first set up for the first time. Once that setup is done, you will be writing your components, and you will be writing your services, and you will be writing that code, and you'll be pushing on daily basis. Once you push, that CI, we call it continuous integration. The CI job will run, and it will deploy your changes in the environment automatically. Okay, we don't have to do all these things, but we must have some fair idea on how it will work. Okay. Okay. So any further questions? We'll cover these 2 topics you mentioned, right? Tomorrow we'll cover this. With like 15-20 minutes, you can finish these 2 topics.
Sure.
Okay. You already know the bootstrap, not bootstrapping process, the bootstrap content. The library. The CSS components we have, right?
Okay.
Let me show it here.
Yeah, this is
You worked on this? I mean, you know some idea on this, how to use and how to?
not really. Yeah, like I said, it's been like
I didn't get.
more than 7 years. So
Okay. So yeah, we'll cover this also tomorrow. I'll
Mhm.
just give you an overview how to use this component and how to work on this, but
Okay.
it's not going to be complete end-to-end session because there will be too many components,
Mhm.
and it will take around like 20 days, like 15 to 20 days. But I'll just show you what components we have and how to basically work on this. Okay. I'll give
Okay.
you just overview, like 20 to 30 minutes of overview
Mhm.
tomorrow. I think that will be good enough. Then later you can explore on how can you use that Bootstrap components wherever you want.
Okay. Mhm.
Okay.
Mhm.
Okay, then if you don't have any questions, I think we can close the session today.
Yeah.